I've experienced the recently dead, what I believe to be a ghost, trying to talk to me. And that's when my grandfather passed away. And I was helping my grandma. She's all alone. I'm in Florida, in this house that was built in the 80s or early 90s. Never had any weird things happen in that house, nothing. And the day before I was leaving, about a week after the funeral, it was just me and her. I'm helping her get set up with her life to be alone now. And I was woken up really early before the sunrise, and I just felt like I had to sit in the chair in the living room. And all of a sudden, the button to the ceiling fan started moving and turning on, and the ceiling fan would go to high, medium, low. I had never experienced anything like that. And I'm watching this happen, and I just instantly knew that's my grandfather telling me, like, I'm here, it's gonna be all right.
See, I feel like I have to believe that, like, ghosts are dead people giving you signs.
I think
that's the only way I can.
I think that's one aspect, but I think there's probably a lot of interdimensional.
How brutal would it be
too.
if it's like some hobo interdimensional being like, "Hey Jim, watch this."
He thinks it's his grandfather.
Well, you know what? But speaking, happy Mother's Day to everybody out there.
That's right.
But James Van Der Beek, the actor, he tells an awesome Mother's Day. Well,
Yes.
it's really kind of sad actually, but he tells a Mother's Day story that happened. I think he talked about it last year, where his mother died in July of 2020.
Yep.
And before she died, she gifted the family candles with a note that said, "To my angels." And then when his wife, like shortly after that, his wife was giving birth to like their sixth kid. I don't know. They have a lot of kids. And I think she was doing a home birth. And they were burning those candles that the mother gave them.
Right.
When the candles like got down like really low, it was going to drip on the wood. And I think someone like blew them out. Yep. The wax went right onto the mirror and created an angel-like figure.
But it's not just that. It actually, there's video of it. It created the figure exactly that his mom's pose was in her photo that was on the stand.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So... And it sounds ridiculous, but
he's splattering wax.
Yes.
Splattering wax on the mirror.
A human could not even do that,
right?
And it's thick too.
She's bent a certain way, and a dress, and there's even details in the background of the photo that are also in the wax melting below the figure. So it's interesting.
There's also just I won't go on a tangent, but there's like this story I was reading recently where a little kid was driving with his parents, and then he looked down the road and says, "I used to go to school there." And he's like 5, and they were like, "When did you go to school there?" And he was like, "In my past life." Or he didn't say it. He said something like, "When I was George," or something like this. And they were like, "What?" Yep. And then he says the name of the school, and they were like, "Who told you this?" And they looked it up, and there was a guy named. They found the person, they found the school, and but there's a bunch of stories.
Why do kids have more of like an?
I think because their innocence.
No, but that kid was saying when I was
like he was the guy,
like he was reborn.
I think of that. Oh yeah, it could be that. I think of it as like fingerprints of memory getting passed through the DNA.
Well, they also
like
say
ancestral DNA.
Yes. When you're in the womb, you take on other trauma.
But he wasn't related to the guy.
Oh, he wasn't related to the guy.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I'm projecting what I'm thinking about. I know a guy, Clint Brantley, who was the main character, the real person in Inverted World 2. When he was a child, had very, very vivid memories of how to fly a certain warplane that his dead grandfather flew that died before he was born. And he would tell his parents like all these things. And his family thought perhaps those memories were passed from the grandfather to him. Because it's like this kid never played with this specific type of plane. He's describing very detailed, this warplane from like World War II or World War One. But should we let's get to our caller. Let's get to Jessica. This is a perfect transition into callers. And I just want to say, I'm most excited about getting calls from everybody. I can't wait to hear these stories from all these people. I've got so many submissions, and I'm very, very grateful for everyone who's reached out with the story. My hope is with this show that we can kind of become a lighthouse in the dark, where we share all these dark, twisted, unhinged, mysterious, strange stories, but also remind ourselves that this world is equally beautiful and filled with joy.
But what if after like 6 episodes you've solved the mystery and it's just...
Then we're chilling. Then this is just going to be like a live stream of empty chair, and the ghost can come in here and do his thing, and we'll go meet at the beach or something.
Let's get a little ghost scream.
So,
Jessica, are you with us?
I'm here.
Woo!
Okay, so this is Jessica, and just before you go, I got to say, this is Jessica. Jessica's responsible for so much of the great art done at Timcast, for Inverted World, for everything. Shout out to you and all the amazing work you've done. You hustle. It's amazing. You've done, my book covers, and I'm grateful for it. And I thought it'd be great to have you on as our first caller. And if you'd like to share your story with us, we would love that.
Well, thank you guys for having me. This was really last minute. I actually messaged Shane early this morning after I was chit-chatting with 2 of our other coworkers, and I was telling them this story that I've forgotten about. And I was like, oh, this is probably worthy of Inverted World Live. So this is part of my journey to believing in spirits and ghosts, the afterlife's real. I used to think aliens were probably real and that ghosts were definitely fake.
How
and I just want to
what were you thinking of like ghost experiences if you thought they were fake?
I thought ghosts were probably like aliens that are just invisible, just fucking with us.
invisible aliens. I like that. That's a good name for our band. But okay, so you used to think that, and then what happened?
Well, a lot of things. And you know, over the years, meeting Brian, who was really into paranormal, he introduced me to a whole bunch of stuff where I'm like, whoa, okay, you know, there's something to this. But then there's also, you know, this one thing that I've told you about, it's really personal, that you know, also helped with that. And I just want to preface this with a warning that it involves domestic violence. So I'm just going to throw that out there ahead of time in case, you know, people need that warning. All right, so if you're ready, I'll get into it.
Yeah, take it away.
All right, so this is back in 2010. My mom had died in June. In September, I'd signed a new lease with this guy I had been dating for a while. We like spent all of our time together anyway, and my roommate had just left at the end of when our lease ended, so it made sense for him to like take over and, you know, be on the lease for the new one. And then like a few weeks later, he's like Jekyll and Hyde, and he turns into a monster. And it was at this point I realized I made like a really big mistake. Originally I'm like, I just have to make it to like the end of this lease, and then I'm out of here. Fuck this guy, you know. I'm sorry, bad word. But then I realized that winter that I wasn't gonna make it to see the end of this lease. And then so this event that happened next was the tipping point. I get home from work and something causes an argument. I'm upset. I don't want to fight. I just want to go to another room and calm down, be alone. I go to the bedroom. I sit on the bed, you know, hug my pillow, crying. He follows me into the room moments later, sits next to me, tries to put his arm around me, but I'm still like, I just want to be left alone. So like, I hug my pillow a little tighter and just lean away from him. He snaps, rips the pillow out of my arms, places it on my face, and pushes me down on the bed. He's suffocating me. I'm not strong enough to push him off. I can't scream for help. So in my mind, as I'm like thinking, this is it, I'm gonna die. I'm screaming for my mom to save me. He eventually lets up and leaves the room. You know, I start packing my bags immediately. Like, he catches me trying to escape, pummels me around the apartment, you know, preventing me from leaving. The neighbors heard and called the police. They took him away, and I had a 3-day protective order in place, you know, courtesy of the state.
Wow.
So with nowhere to go, no money to like afford to break my lease because they require like 2 months worth of rent, and I'm like making like peanuts back then. I finally decided to call my dad and, you know, tell him I can't get myself out of this. I need help. I spent that night packing, like mentally preparing myself to make that phone call. The next day, like I call. My dad's 2 hours away, but he shows up the same day with his truck. We pack up my life into his truck and my hatchback. He pays the leasing office off to break my lease with money from my mom's life insurance, and then I was free. Fast forward a few years later, I've processed all the trauma and you know, the damage to my ego. I'm talking with my dad about that day and about mom, and I told him how like in my head, like I'm screaming for my ghost mom to save me. He stops me like right there to tell me what happened to him. So that day he took a nap after he got home from work. He was woken up to the sound of my mom screaming his name from the living room. She kept calling for him. He could hear her clear as day. He jumps out of bed, makes his way to the living room. It's empty. You know, she's gone. The next day he picks up the phone. It's me.
Wow.
And told him how I'd been getting beaten up. You know, I apologized for not asking for help sooner. He just lost his wife. You know, grandma, you know, his mother just died 6 months before that. Like, I didn't want him worried he was going to lose his daughter too.
Wow.
So my mom, you know, trying to save her child, you know, the only thing she could, and she alerted my dad. Like, she heard me.
That's unbelievable.
That's my story.
I mean, that is horrible that it happened to you. Amazing, spooky Mother's Day story. And it's like, when you heard that from your father, so I'd imagine that is what started to change the way you view ghosts, and how do you view them now?
I was kind of already like in my quest of being like, maybe there's something to it, but like when my dad told me that, I was just like, you know, the afterlife's real, because when you lose someone, you really do want to believe like they're always with you, and you know, you're always like looking for signs.
Yeah.
And I was like, that you don't get any like clear of, you know, a sign than that.
Wow. Have you had other experiences with your mother or your father saying he's had experiences with her?
No, that's the only one.
Wow.
You know, but
Yeah.
that, I mean, honestly, that's like enough for me.
Well, yeah. It's incredible. That's kind of, you know, it reminds me in a weird way of what happened to me with my grandfather. You know, it's something, you know, obviously a very different situation, but it seems like they can reach across the divide to try to communicate with you when things are down. You know, my situation clearly different, but dealing with the loss of someone very recently, and the sadness of an 85-year-old woman being so isolated. So, but that's a great story, and I appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it till like last night, and then like you're like, that'd be a great Mother's Day story. I'm like, oh yeah, it would, wouldn't it?
In my dark and twisted way, yeah. And real quick, your mother, where did she pass away?
So when she was in the hospital, and they're basically like, there's nothing more we can do, her organs are shutting down, they you know, they sent her home with like a hospital bed and like a hospice nurse, and it's like, you know, just keep her comfortable. And it was in the living room. And
that's the house where your father hurt her?
Yes, the house I grew up in.
Interesting. Yeah, that's so interesting. I hear a lot of stories like that where people experience, you know, that's how I feel about the little boy who seems to have been murdered in the house I grew up in, that these things kind of get trapped in there. And, you know, the boy didn't do much to help out us other than being someone who sat down at the dinner table with us. We kind of adopted him as our ghost brother. But other than that, yeah, that's a beautiful experience. Despite all the horror you had to go through to hear from your mother, it's amazing that you and your father have that strange connection.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story, Jessica.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll see you soon.
Right.
I have
congratulations on the launch.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jessica.
I have a similar but not ghost story.
Yeah.
I've told this one on Timcast IRL before, so maybe some of the people listening have already heard it, but this is one of those stories that makes you believe in God, like, or something. So back in the old neighborhood, growing up in Chicago, we had this friend, and I won't say anybody's names because it involves like criminal activity, but this one friend of ours was pretty lazy. And it's like a weird kind of lazy because when he finally got a job at a fast food restaurant, he was so lazy he would just stay there all day. His boss would be like, "You want to stick around for 4 more hours?" He'd be like, "Sure." Because he didn't want to walk, he didn't want to leave. He was a homebody who would never go anywhere. He was a chubby kid. Finally gets a job, and then he wakes up, goes to work, and he just stays there all day. Whenever the boss asks him if you need for overtime, he's like, "You got it." He's nothing else to do. He's like a homebody, right? So one night, he was supposed to be working, I think till it's like 2 a.m. fast food restaurant, and then around I don't. It's been a long time since we got since it's been 20 something years, right. But around like 10 or so, he goes to his boss abruptly in the middle of his shift and says, "Hey man, I don't feel good. I gotta leave, man. I gotta go." And his boss is like, "Is something wrong? Like, it's very uncharacteristic of you, you know?" And he's like, "No, I just don't feel good." And he was like, "Hey man, look, you pick up every shift we ask you to do. Like, don't even stress, don't even worry about it. You need the night, you take the night." Instead of going home, this fat kid walked 3 miles to another one of our friends' house. Walked, we don't know why. He leaves the restaurant, walks straight there, and he finds the two of them overdosed on heroin.
Whoa.
But alive. And he pulls them out. They won't wake up. He sprays them with the hose. They won't wake up. He calls 911. They get there in a few minutes, administer Narcan, and both the guys live.
What? And
the first thing I remember when someone tells me is they were like, "Hey, did you hear that, you know, dude found someone's, like, dude's overdose?" And I was like, "For real?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, how did he wait, what? How did he find him?" And they were like, he like showed up and found him overdose. And I was like, "Wait, what do you mean he showed up? That's like 3 miles away." Like, we're talking like you've got Harlem Avenue in Chicago
Right.
to like past Central Avenue.
Wow.
And then they were like, yeah, he walked over to their house and saw, and the car was around the block
So
even.
Well, like the spirit was drawing
That's a
him
divine
there?
intervention.
No idea.
That's divine
But
intervention.
like apparently when the police asked him why, like something doesn't add up. They say, sir, you left work early and came and found these. It wasn't even at his house, like because they were doing heroin.
Mm-hmm.
They had parked the car like around the corner and they were like, sir, what are you doing here? And he was crying, saying, I don't know.
Wow.
He was like, I was at work and I started to feel weird. I started to feel messed up and I couldn't be here anymore. And then I told my boss I needed to leave. And then I just had to walk over here for some reason. I just had to do it. And then he found him and they would have been dead if he did not
Holy
get there.
crap. I'm afraid to even ask this. What happened to that kid after that? Was
was
that like a
two-
life-changing?
two guys.
Well, I mean, the guy
Oh, I
who
don't
walked. You know, I'm like curious. Like, was that a wake-up moment for him? Like, I don't want to be lazy anymore.
He lost, like,
or did he
100
like
pounds.
find?
No.
Yeah, he became a marathon runner.
No, of
Yeah.
course not.
No, 'cause
As
this
far as I
seems-
know, he just stayed the exact same way he always was.
Wow.
Yes, it was so weird because we were like, they called him Fatso.
Right.
Like,
the
this is
kid
a
who
kid-
didn't want to leave the work, who
Yeah.
was just lazy.
I will say this, for all I know, they're telling stories.
Right. Right.
It is true that the kids overdosed and the police
Right.
came and that was a big deal in the neighborhood.
Right.
And a bunch of people try to come up with reasons as to why he was actually over there. He didn't really walk. That's
Right.
not true. He must have taken a bus. He said he walked. How could he have walked? But it's like,
Yeah.
here's the thing to think about. He walked, I think it's like, I don't know, 2 miles probably.
Okay.
That means during his walk, these two guys shot up heroin.
Right.
It wasn't that they shot up heroin and then he got the feeling. It's that something sent him on his way there before they even did it.
Right. He was on an invisible bridge.
Maybe he knew that they were going to be doing heroin. He was like, I just got to make sure they're okay.
Could be, but the lazy guy walking all that way.
So
Right, 'cause he
so
was taking-
that's the first thing people said. They were like, nah, he knew what they were up to and he was trying to get in on it. And I was like, why would he walk? Why would he even show up to work at all in the first place?
Right.
If he knew that his friends were going to be doing drugs and he wanted to go drugs, he would have taken the night off in the first place.
Right.
He wouldn't abruptly in the middle of his shift be like, it's time for me to leave. And as far as we knew, he did not do those kinds of drugs. So you really what it comes down to is if you're the skeptic,
Yeah.
you're going to say, dumb kids in the south side of Chicago doing drugs and this guy was going to get in on it. I don't need to hear anything else.
Right.
But a lot of people in the neighborhood, at least in the back of their minds, they're like, maybe there's something else.
The thing with that stuff is you got to be skeptical always, you know, but the story is amazing. However, you know that there have been instances where people are, say, like a child trapped under a car and all of a sudden someone has the strength to lift a car up.
Yeah.
You know, so things do happen that are bizarre. You know, it's obviously a different situation, but there are things that happen that are miracles.